Episode 22, Unification Party, Unification Headquarters. Jason Rowe, party leader, co-host of this incredible podcast, top 5% in the world, 5 podcast, according to YouTube's own statistics. Adrian Blizzard. Adrian,
Hey, Jay.
What do you have for us this week?
Well, a whole lot of usual nothing. I think the funniest thing that I've seen that I love in world events and world issues has to be Trump related. The reaction to Trump having the South African president at the Oval Office there the other day, and confronting him with genocide in his own country. Bold play there, Cotton. If you ask me, I loved it.
Okay, I get it too. But for those who may have not have seen it, which I doubt if you're watching this obscure political podcast that you're not aware of this, but South African president sitting with Mr. Trump, President Trump, excuse me, and President Trump just basically said, "Why are you killing all the white people in your country?" And I mean, that's a pretty in your face kind of a situation. Then Trump proceeded to bring up some news clips, documentary clips, brought up some clips of
a handful of papers of dead people stories.
Yeah, so he seemed to he came prepared to like put this gentleman on the spot. I think that's the most interesting part of the story, that you take a world leader and put him on the spot.
So did Ramaphosa, because it wasn't just put him on the spot. Like, he had all of his ministers there. He even had like a coalition, like a member of like a different governing party. I think he was the Minister of Agriculture, the white guy there who got to speaking. And then Trump seemed to have some other like South African friends that he like have connections there and had issues. Yeah, it was very interesting. Like, I think everyone's calling it like he got Zelensky or whatever they were saying the Zelensky thing was. That was it again. But according to the Canadian media, like, Trump just like was an asshole and lied for half an hour, where they're just kind of like, this is the same Canadian media that shut everything down over like residential school bodies being buried that still haven't been found. But like, there's actual, at least some evidence of the South African genocide, it would seem. And like, we're going to pretend like it's not even happening just because we don't like Trump. I don't know. At the end of the day, it's kind of like, I could see why the powers to be don't like that. That rocks the boat. But I like it. Like, let's have a conversation. Who knows? Maybe Trump is wrong.
I kind of wanted to go to the next level to see if he was a bit wrong. I mean, I don't mean the next level in the sense that I quit my job and I dedicated my life to the pursuit, but it doesn't seem to be as cut and dried as it initially looks, right? There seems to be some defendable positions that South Africa is a violent place, and at a disproportionate level, I mean, no, the opposite of that. The white people who are on the receiving end of violence for stealing of stuff is not disproportionate towards the white. And in fact, there seems to be statistics that indicate it's disproportionate towards the black. But we also know that's meaningless, and we can't go to Grok and we can't go to AI or Claude, because they're all going to give us the sanitized version of like, oh, there's no evidence of white genocide.
Well, I know like Lauren Southern did a documentary on it a few years ago about it, and I've heard other people talk about just the chaos and whatnot down there for years. Now, the biggest thing I think that everybody's kind of looking at is that one South African member of parliament. I can't find it right now, but like, basically, I don't know if you've seen it, where there's like I think he's the communist member of parliament. I think he's like number 3 or 4 party in power down there. And he's in a soccer stadium with like 35,000 people chanting like "shoot the boar, shoot to kill," like the farmer, that song. They're singing like a song.
I understand. One of the lines in the song, which is a historic song, apparently a historic fight, is "kill the boar." And the boar, when they say that, is BOER, which is, I guess, a term for the Dutch.
The boar.
The Boers, but if you don't know what that, right. But if you don't know, what that is. I'm saying, for who might be listening,
Yeah.
Dutch descendants who settled 400 or 500 years ago in South Africa
The
are
Afrikaners
referred
are
to the
called Boers. Yeah.
Boers, yeah. And
Now,
there was a Boer
South
war.
African President Ramaphosa called to the agricultural minister when they were in that meeting, and they basically were like, "Look, like that's why we're working together. Like I came to work with Ramaphosa so that guy didn't get power. They're a minority, so it'd kind of be like if Jagmeet Singh was saying something crazy, and like
No, but let me finish the point. The point that I was making is apparently even in their Supreme Court over there, or whatever their highest level court over there, this was taken, or to some court, I can't remember exactly, but the point being is not somebody, somebody in ruled that kill the Boer as a statement was
free speech.
no, it was free speech, and the reason it was is it wasn't referring to killing individual Dutch people.
Correct.
It was to tearing down the system.
But that
So
kind of goes back to like the Supreme Court in America with like Skokie versus Illinois when the Klan wanted to march, and their whole thing was like, yeah, like they're not saying a specific Jew, they're saying like just broadly, like and
I know,
like
but I'm not bringing these up. I'm only bringing these up because I want to be a fair and balanced podcast, bringing the truth to the people. I believe 100% in my heart of hearts, without being able to get the knowledge that there's just be human nature. There's no way you could have a bunch of rich people with some nice sweet land and a bunch of poor people who can barely get their shit together, and they're not going to be envious. And whatever method or whatever words you want to say, and if only 10% of the population is saying like kill Whitey or take his land or whatever they want, and even that other, I know the point. Well, of course, the Constitution and the courts say you can expropriate land from a white person without compensation. But in reality, it's never been, we
yeah.
know the practices we pay, and it's never been done where we've taken it and not paid. But regardless of all that, critics who might be listening to this, I understand the counter arguments. My point being is you can't tell a bunch of disenfranchised people indirectly or directly through constitutional edict or songs by the third most popular party or a nut bar in parliament. If you can't come out and speak directly against it, you're going to have disproportionate amount of violence, and it'll be self-justified by those small percentage of the population. And if I was a white dude with a family, I would be getting out of there.
Yeah, and it just seems like a turbulent situation. Like I even remember as a child, like I think it was Lethal Weapon 2, and like that was when the South Africans were the bad guys. That was kind of the crew. And like
Yeah,
Danny Glover tries to set up
community.
Yeah, well, Danny Glover tries to sign up for a bank at the South African embassy. He tried to get asylum in South Africa, and they're just like, "But you blick." And like, I never, but that blew my mind. I was like, "Wait a second, what's going on down there?" And like, it just seemed like it's been turbulent for a long, long time. And at the end of the day, I think it serves everybody in that nation, aside from like maybe the corrupt people at the top right now, to kind of do something to fix it, right? Whatever that is.
Yeah, but there's no fixing it. There's like, it's like one of these things that has like literally no solution. It's like Israel and Gaza. You can't jam the two together and go like, oh, we'll have a two-party solution.
It's a pendulum, right? Like
not
Israel,
even
Gaza,
a pendulum. You don't have. They've literally taken the country. They've created like what we would call DEI. DEI
the country, and yeah,
DEI the country. Yeah, and it's like the saying, like, we don't care if you're qualified, this, that, or whatever. Like, again, I get it. I'm not saying that, like, oh, the blacks are wrong, the whites are right. I'm not saying I'm just saying some things can just be a mess, and you can sit back and look at it and go, that's a mess, and there's no solution. Like, there's no way you take, like, oh, look at all these richer guys with a better, whatever reason, genetics, better culture, whatever, better ability to oppress. I don't care what reason, whatever groups are going to pick to say, but you have that kind of disproportionate inequity with a clearly distinctive feature. Do you remember that? Like, sorry to digress, but there was a first, like, first generation Star Trek. There was a Star Trek episode that I remember as a little kid, and there were like these planet of people, and they had their, like, one half of their face was like jet black, and the other half of their face was white. But some of them, the white was on this side, but some of them, the white was on that side. But when you first started watching the show, you had no ability to distinguish. There was just like, oh, those are the Star Trek people, and then those are the black and white people. But as you got to understand more about their culture, the black and white people who are opposite black and whites on their face hated each other, and it was the whole thing was don't be racist. Well, I learned my lesson from Star Trek from the 1960s back then rerun, because I was able to look at, but I also learned the lesson from that was that it is in us as humans to make clear distinctions, whether we're white to the left of our face and black to the right, or right and black, or blah blah blah. The point is, this is what we do genetically and biologically. Again, reinforcing my point that you can't have, like, whatever the population differential is, 90, 10, 75, 25, doesn't matter. You can't have that huge population, that disenfranchised, and expect that they're not going to,
Harmony.
especially in a democracy,
Yeah.
to somehow put the screws to the other population.
Four
Period.
wolves and a sheep deciding what's for dinner.
Yeah, exactly. But even without malice, like, take all the malice away.
No, I
Just
got
be
you.
a real. Just be a realist. Us and them, and
No, it's four triangles and a circle. The triangles are just naturally going to make policies that help triangles out. Not even that they hate circles; they're just triangles.
yeah, exactly. Even without malice, it's still a disaster to be a white
I will say
minority.
this, though, to the South Africa point in general, it does seem, if you were gun to my head, it does seem like it was, though, better overall for everybody under apartheid at present. And I'm not saying like the height of, like, I'm not saying at the height of apartheid, like a president or whatever, but I mean, like, and I'm not saying just because the trains ran on time, but like
that is part of civilization that you have to consider. But yes, I would agree.
I hear that slums are bigger now than they were then.
You beat your own point. Your point was, I was actually kind of half with you, 5%, when you said it was better under apartheid, until you said not just because the trains ran on time. I was going to say the only reason it might have been better is that from an administrative perspective, it ran better. I'm sure that's the case.
And that's what it is. And that's just from what I'm seeing. And, like, again, prove me wrong. Like, I want to see the land of milk and honey. And that
you're not the only one. It's not the only example. Like, you have the example of Rhodesia. You have the example, like, Zimbabwe kicks the farmers. Modern day Zimbabwe kicks the farmers.
Rhodesia's like the saddest one of them all. Where, like, if you look into that one, you're just kind of like, the West turned on them in the middle of the Cold War. So, like, the Russians backed the communist rebels, and, like, and even the people there were like, the whites weren't even mean to us. We just, like, we're like, whatever. Like, it's not even, wasn't, I don't know. Again, I wasn't there, but from what I look at it, like, that country looked like a little oasis.
Well, Botswana, are you familiar with Botswana at all, or anything to do with Botswana?
Yeah, I know Botswana is the first country to get independence from the British, and, like, then they found diamonds. Like, I always remember it being, like, the luckiest country in colonialism because they found the resources after the white people left.
Well, I perhaps that's interesting as well. But what I found, the one point I heard about Botswana was that Botswana went from, like Singapore, they went from, like, I don't want to be crazy and say, like, living in huts to living in high rises, but they went from being one of the most least educated countries in the world to one of the most educated countries in Africa. Yeah, and and with advanced degrees and this, that, and whatnot, in like a remarkably short period of time. And apparently a lot of it is credited to their royal family. Again, if you're from Botswana, please forgive me. I read an article, leaders could be tyrants. But my point being, initially, all around the circle, is when people can demark each other easily, i.e. black white. It's an easy recipe. I mean, we've grown up with it's in our genetics for, and we'll use the words instead of black and white, we'll use in group, out group, uh, genetic relative versus, and I mean, these classifications get smaller and smaller, right down to like my children versus my sister's children. Like I love my children more than my sister's children, but I love my sister's children way more than I love some.
We love everybody. We're a podcast of
Right,
mediation and peace.
right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
right. But the point being is blah blah blah. Like obviously we've been genetically programmed to look after our own, and those circles go out. And when those circles bang up against other circles, usually what happens is those two fight, and then the Scottish and the Irish fought until the Scottish and the Irish fought the Welsh and the Welsh and the English, and then ultimately they all got together and went decided, well, we won't fight each other. We'll go fight the Vikings, and then when we're done fighting them, we'll go down and we'll fight the, in the Crusades, and right, we'll stop fighting each other in Europe. We'll send all our sons from white Europe down to the, beat up the Arabs in Jerusalem. So it's just how we are. So
Well,
that's going
for
to
the
hurt.
record, we like a lot of us love to forget about like a certain part of history, but like the Arabs had a presence in Europe through Spain for like I think like 500
Well,
years.
for sure.
I'm just saying
Everybody's
they
got
were a
history.
threat. It wasn't just like, oh, let's go beat up the desert people again. It was like, no, they were a powerhouse for a
No,
long
but
time.
I'm not saying, I'm not
I didn't think
saying
you
that
were. I'm just clarifying.
anecdotally. I'm not even saying that. I'm saying from my understanding of reading history and remembering the point at one time, there was a conscientious decision from Western Europe was because they had this like their culture and societal advancement was based on being part of the military and military conquest. They didn't have a society system set up to transfer like power and prestige without battle. So there was a conscious decision by whiteys in Western Europe to go like, shit, look at what we've done. We need to send these boys someplace else so we
Or
can
they're gonna
finally have
overthrow us all.
right.
Like,
So we can finally have some peace. Like we're like we as people and civilization have matured to a certain point, but our institutions haven't. What a great point to leave now that all stuff to do with at South Africa, because we're talking about where societies have to change and evolve. And here we are right now in a time in our society where evolutionarily and societally we need to change, and we are changing, but our institutions are literally trash for the occasion. Which reminded me, I was having this conversation with a immigrant who is on the work program to become a permanent resident in Canada, and we were discussing how it's all a joke and there's no jobs, and we bring you over here, middle class people, to take bad education courses and whatnot, and we assume malice and it's all a big ripoff. But I'm not even again. We get rid of this malice for half of these calamities. The calamity was the people who are making the decisions are my age. They're in their 50s. When I grew up, everyone told us we had to go to university, and the path of success was a white collar job in some sort of administration level or above. So we've created these entire immigration programs, which on the surface are genius, right? Hey, India, you raise the children in your school system and make sure the sick ones get fixed and on your dime, and you educate them, you get them to the age of like ripeness. We'll come and pluck them from the trees. We'll sell them a high priced degree, and then we'll throw them into mid level management in Canada, and we'll tax the shit out of them, and we'll increase our middle class in Canada, and the system will work, right? Problem being is, like we said before, system changed in Europe, and the institutions were behind the scenes or behind in understanding what to do. We're in the same boat now. The institutions don't know. We need tradespeople in this country. We need this, we need that, but no Indian village is going to send their trades, like they don't scrape together their gold reserves to send their least bright engineering prospect. Let's go send Manpreet over to be a plumber. Like that's like a humiliation, right? You wouldn't say, like, you don't, you dream of your son being, must be doctor, must be engineer. We sold the dream of becoming like, oh, business management, blah, blah, blah. You're going to come here and get a $60,000, when that meant something, $60,000 a year plus job, do some sort of administrative thing. And you're happy
Man,
to send your kids here. Yeah. So we're bringing the wrong people here for jobs that don't exist. They're starting to wake up. They're taking off. There's untold numbers of stories of people go like, this place blows. Our brightest and smartest are taking off. They're like, I can make more money in the States. My brother, who's a world something in some small specialty thing, he took off to Europe. Like anybody, like he has some money. Almost anyone I know who has money got out of here. So that's going to bode bad for the future. Why am I the doom and gloom guy all the time?
Well, because someone put a hole in your glass. But I will
Full.
say, just
My
to
glass is
support
full.
your gloom, I did see a report from the banks that apparently Q2 in Canada we're supposed to lose like 250,000 jobs.
Yeah, it makes
Like
sense.
this quarter. Yeah. And I did see, yeah, I agree with you. Like I like the point you brought up though, where like the systems are kind of are archaic, and like that's kind of what needs to change. But I think, like, you know me, like one of our big differences is I'm a big they guy. You're a big just like natural human impulse guy.
Yeah, laziness, whatever.
Yeah, but I do attribute, like, I think the archaic system is working just fine for they, right? Like the people who want to change, because something that I was thinking the other day on a kind of side note was like the term misinformation. Like such it's up there with like conspiracy theorists, like the origins of it, where you're just like, no two brothers were like watching like a Leafs game and like an ad came on and one of them was like, well, that's misinformation. Like it's just such an institutionalized word. Like
Yeah.
almost you can tell it was created in like a boardroom or a lab.
Oh,
Just
totally.
because just to discourage like anything that's like against like whatever they or the institution is promoting. But because like with the advances we've had in technology and like just something simple we could do, there's so many things where if this was truly a democracy, we probably would have tabled a budget. The parliament probably would have sat in the summer, whatever. But like there's like so many little things we could do that just would make it go, to make people feel transparency. You know what I mean? Like if there was,
Yeah, but
that's not what it's
transparency,
about.
do you even think that's real? There's no such thing, man. There's no such thing. Do you even think the people are capable of synthesizing the transparent information? Of course, the government has to be. It's like I was a parent, right? So I have 3 kids. I can't
Sometimes
tell
you put
them.
them to bed early on trumped up charges just because you needed to do something
Sometimes
that day.
you put them to bed on trumped up charges for your benefit, for the
For
household's
the wife's,
benefit,
whatever, yeah,
for
for the
their
household's benefit.
for the
Your wife,
household's
you
benefit.
needed to spend,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And I
So
agree.
right. So like again, it's very easy for us to be like, oh, the carnies, like Carney's the evil circus worker who wants to pay all his buddies top dollar and sell you bug food and put you in a modular home and blah blah blah. Like, or more likely is if I was Carney and I was really rich and I was somehow like somebody tricked me into being the leader of a political party. Oh, and I won the prime ministership, of course I would, without malice, be like, oh, I need a guy to build a bunch of things. I know a guy who builds things, right? And I'd be like, oh, I need to increase the amount of goats in Canada. I'm like, I know a guy, Adrian, he's got goats. It's not malice. I would just go to, you are the guy I know who has the most goats. So I would go to you because you're the guy I know who has
Well, if
goats.
I may, I like where you're at with that, but I will say on that exact note, I did hear somebody say that like since Carney was kind of like the big bad banker and businessman, you would have assumed he would have that he would have gotten a different people in his cabinet and not just kind of picked the same old bunch of lackeys. But I will say he's getting crap right now from the media because the elbows up crowd, I guess, supposedly isn't stoked because it came out that like he dropped those tariffs like the day, like during the election, but didn't tell anybody. And like he did what like I was saying he should do, which is just like capitulate. Like they've won, it's over. Like just move on.
Yeah,
Like this
yeah, yeah.
isn't the card. This isn't the card, right?
Right.
And but he just lied about it. That's the big deal that everyone seems to be mad about, that he's lied about it. And in my mind, I'm
Yeah,
kind of like,
but
I'm
that
happy
is,
you did that.
but well, me too. It's all like if you
It's for the
realize
greater
it's
good.
all a joke, right? Then you can
Right.
stand back and have a little bit of fun and not be so like terrified. But this whole Carney business that we're even talking about here, it proves my point in the sense that like it is all a ruse. We can't know the information. There is no level of transparency. They tell us what they need to tell us to move the dial in the direction they need to go. And there's 5 competing groups internationally. And again, that number is a made up number, but there is no like, yes, of course, these people would like this, and the globalists and the Klaus Schwabs would, ooh, it would be great if we could socially engineers the people to do the things that we like to do because we are so smart. It's not because he's evil. I mean, I'm not saying there's no evil in the world, but I'm just saying is like
Well,
people are
everyone can
pretty
hear their own
quick.
story.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. There's a lot of psychology behind it. No, that's I
I
again,
just I
I
just
would.
I just look around. I look around. Okay. I'm gonna give you an example. I've moved a lot in my life. I met a guy today. No, this is something I've noticed as I go now that I'm older and I've lived in enough places to acquire maybe a bit of knowledge and wisdom. And I moved to St. John and I realized, and again, this has nothing to do with St. John people per se. This is about archetypes and whatever. Is I realized there's like, and again, this is a made up number, not based on anything, like there's like 8 people in the world. And then there's just like a billion of those 8 people. And I like today, where I'm from, I had a buddy, his name was West. And today I met St. John West. And there's no question this guy is Westy. He's St. John Westy. As soon as I talked to him for like, we are probably now going to be friends, just like I was friends with Westy from where I'm from. I am probably now be friends with St. John Westy. He is identical. From where I'm from, I had a buddy named Robin. I've got a St. John. Like it just becomes there's like personality types
It's
and
archetype. I get what you're
there's
saying.
archetypes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just think to myself, when I look around how those friends and archetypes that exist around, whether they're friends or even foes or former employees or this or that, or maybe there's 20 archetypes. This is not a science. It's just whatever. My point being is I don't see evil around me in my life. What I see around me is like jocks on the football team being assholes. So that's like the oil cartel. And then I see over here is like the mayor, bit of a drunk, likes to give contracts to his cousin who's in the construction business. But maybe his construction
They do
cousin
a good
is
job.
actually capable and is a good job, and they have
But
such a good relationship that the town gets the best value
I bet she
imaginable.
saves money on lunch dinners. Yeah.
Yes, I have no idea. Like that's what I'm saying. These things are impossible. And then you bring all this information to everybody, and then you say like, "Oh, now we're going to vote on it," and we're like, "That's the system we want to like steer the change." Like, come on. It's just it just doesn't make sense to me. Where have you ever been? Where have you worked where there was a cabal of evil geniuses pulling the strings? It wasn't. You worked in sales and you had maybe even you even told me you didn't even know how your company worked and maybe there was some monkey business. You didn't even know, but you never once said there's like a bunch of guys in a dark room pulling some big scams. You never even said that. You're like, oh, this is maybe there's too much money for the golf tournament and not enough money for the whatever. It was all like,
I said I thought my company was the clean shirt in the laundry. Is what I
or
just said
whatever. But
information.
you know what I'm saying, right? You're just saying
Yeah.
like I'm not saying anything other than I've never just met anything, and maybe I'm just fortunate to have never met the cabal of evil geniuses. I just don't believe that's an archetype that exists. I mean, again, I know there's a psychopath who cut up girls and put them in suitcases. Like, I understand that these anomalies happen. And I understand that there's like Skull and Bones at Yale. Well, I used to have a club in my town called the Sunshiners. It was stupid. And we did it for other reasons. And we had a great time for a long time. And if maybe it caught on a little bit bigger in the future, people would be talking about the Sunshiners. But it didn't have any traction. So no one will. And just like Skull and Bones, it's a bunch of guys who glad hand. And just like I went to school in the United States, for instance, right? I went down to the United States and immediately I was best friends with all the Canadian students. Were we conspiring to like take over the school or no, man? It was just
Human nature.
familiarity.
Yeah.
Human nature. And
Yeah.
human nature for me explains the majority of these conspiracies way better than super geniuses that can avoid all black swan events. Like nobody can even tell me with certainty what the price of gold will be next month. There's a whole industry into guessing about it, and then there's a whole other industry into subterfuge about it, and then the whole a news industry in the political sphere to steer money and policy as whatnot is a whole other industry, billions of dollars. And there's a whole other industry for misinformation, $1 billion. And then we're going to ask people to vote on this stuff. And then we're going to think, well, we have transparency. They're ridiculous.
Look, here's the thing. I will give you that, like, when you do go down this rabbit hole and you're just kind of like, you really kind of get to the point where, like, the so to say, the they or the Klaus Schwab would get to in your own head, where you're like, you maybe don't want the average person having their voice heard all the time. Like, the average person's an idiot,
Absolutely. Especially if the
right?
average person can be swayed. Like you just got, look
So,
at
so
elbows
emotional.
up. Elbows
Yeah.
up was it? And immediately 9 years forgotten in a second. I had people
Yeah.
who wanted to kill me for not wearing a mask, right? They were literally going to kill me, right? How long did it take? Like people said, like, oh, I can never understand how the Holocaust happened. And I saw people here would be happy to load me on a train. Would load me on a train in a heartbeat
With glee. Yeah.
with glee. Yeah. So I've lost all faith in uh, the
common man.
democratic, the common man, Democrat. Like if I was had to rely on like I mean, Lord of the Flies, basically. I mean, we all had to read that. We all get it, and there's no different. There's just I would say the kids in the book who were a representation of again probably archetypes like Piggy was the smart whatever and Ralph was this and Jack was that. They all I'm sure I can't remember but they all represented probably a type of person.
Probably was back to Gilgamesh. Yeah.
Yeah. Jordan Peterson, if he was here, he could point all the things together. But ultimately, from what I remember, was it becomes violent and distasteful, and when everything runs amok, when the common man can be swayed by the fear of the Lord of the Flies, a pig head on a stick. And the pig head on the stick for most Canadians a month ago was Trump. And so they were all elbows up. That pig on a stick is going to come and get us. And next thing you know, we're bashing our own brains out. At least in the book, they bashed Piggy's brains out. And our Canadians here, we like literally pick up rocks and bash our own brains out. Like,
Yeah.
so, right. So we're like, I don't even know what to say. We're not even Lord of the Flies. We're like worse. We're worse than Lord of the Flies.
Well, you know what I thought of an analogy is like for Canada and America. We're like Canada's like the parents and we're like the kids who just went off to school and are completely subsistent on them. And we're like nice when we're on the phone. But like when we're off the phone, we're like, Dad's a loser. Like I'm so much smarter than Dad. Like my poli sci professor gets me. Like I'm gonna try. My dad doesn't get it. My dad's an idiot. Like
Yeah, my dad's an idiot. Yeah, exactly. You might
meanwhile,
be
like
right. You might be
yeah.
right. That's a good. I mean, that's even if it's not right, it's still great. It's the funniest thing I've
What do you
heard.
think of Trump talking about the Golden Dome today? He's
The
just like,
Golden
yeah,
Dome.
Canada called. Like, yeah, we're going to let them in. Of course, we always do. Like, we're going to.
I know. I said a few weeks ago I was going to make Canada stand answer by. He's my son, so Golden Dome.
Yeah, and
that is
I
a
think
good analogy.
And with Carney in America, I kind of like that he lied because, like, we all knew it. Like, no shit.
I bet he didn't lie, though. That's what I'm saying. It was so easy to find the malice.
He didn't lie to me and you, but like, we weren't wearing the elbows up, rewatching Mike Myers on SNL, like crying. You know what I mean? With pride. Like, he lied to those people, right?
I
Like,
guess.
I
But
I
yeah,
don't
but
care.
again,
You
they're
don't care.
ready. I don't care.
And those people, they've moved on. Like, they're
You know
wearing
what?
their Oilers jerseys
You know
now.
what? To be honest with you, the more I see of the mark, and I won't. Okay, I want to make a clear distinction. I'm not saying the word deception. I'm saying the more marketing deceptions, is what I would call them, that Mark Carney pulls off, is actually kind of making me like him a little more than I did
Mm-hmm.
originally. He's actually, because
100%.
as a guy who's on the outside, like realizing none of it matters. It's all a bit of a joke, anyways.
Movie theater. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So watching the new show of Melrose Place season 2, I really think that Carney might actually get with Melanie, from apartment 2B. And I'm actually now kind of rooting for him, even though I know he was last season's big villain. So
Well,
stay tuned.
you and I are also smart enough to realize, like the Liberals or dislike the Liberals, we all like Canada. So, like, if he succeeds, we succeed. So, like,
Yeah,
prove me wrong.
yeah.
Prove
I
us
know. I
wrong.
mean, it's kind of it's kind of a funny thing. Like, you want to see him crash and burn, but it's like, again, cutting off your
We
nose
win
to
either
spite your
way.
face.
We get to be right, or we get to be happily wrong. And
Yeah,
like, you're right, he does look a little snarky and a little cheeky in his press interviews, like giving his
yeah,
grins and whatnot. And you're just kind of like,
yeah,
okay, you seem to be more of a human
yeah.
than Trudeau. So like, I'll
Well,
take
that's
that.
for sure. That's for sure. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, uh, yes, yes,
yeah.
yeah, for sure.
He, he,
I'm less embarrassed for him at the helm, even though even see, I'll even go so far to say is, even if I were to attribute or subscribe to your point of view that there is a global cabal and Mark Carney is like the lieutenant, I would still like him better than Trudeau. If I thought he was like the second in the lieutenant for globalism
yeah,
and
yeah. No,
using
great.
Canada,
He's
yeah,
still
I
better
would
than
still
Trudeau.
like him
And
better. Yeah.
that's a W. Like, in an emergency, something happened with North Korea or something happened with mud floods in Alberta, I would rather Carney get the phone call than Trudeau, and I think it'll be handled at least better than if Trudeau had got it. But on a note of global cabal, I wanted to run something by you. I saw
Okay.
that the Vatican was hosting Zelensky and Russia. And in my mind, right away, I'm just like, aren't they both Orthodox? Like, isn't that place like completely counterintuitive to like where both of those countries stand? Like, and it's not like it would make more
I
sense
don't
for it to
know.
be in like
No, but
Qatar.
no, I suppose, but I'm not sure. Is your premise even true? I'm going to check AI here.
I'm pretty sure they're
Like,
both like, I
no,
think
I
Orthodox.
know historically Orthodox this, Constantinople that, something, something,
You're right. Maybe the
Eastern
Aslav
Europe.
Battalion's Catholic. Who
No,
knows?
no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying
I'm a
is
big
like maybe
Protestant.
there's not.
I'm a
No, when my grandmother and grandfather got together, it was scandalous for one to be a Catholic and one to be a Protestant. So I'm not
right.
negating the point you're making that at one time Eastern Orthodox Church versus the Catholic Church, there could be some sort of thing. I'm just going to see right now. I'm going to
I
ask.
never got the memo that that thing ended.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We don't know. Let's find out. Let's find out.
Sure, yeah,
Keep
fair enough.
talking.
Okay.
Tell the people there's
Well,
something.
I would also say that maybe my guess would be that a big part of that church, I always thought it was Constantinople. At least that's where it started with the Byzantines. But I
Yeah.
guess maybe Russia would be the major player of the Orthodox community these days. So maybe Ukraine is kind of like, we're finding ourselves. We're checking this Catholicism thing out. Like, I did see the other day that even in Iran, only like 34% of Iran is Muslim or Sunni Muslim. There's actually a variety of different religious sects in Iran, although on the outside looking in, you'd believe it to be, a lot higher than that. Like, there was even a small percentage of Jews there, and it's like, okay, where there's a will, there's a way. But yeah, I did find it weird that they'd be meeting at the Vatican.
Well, let's find out.
Also, I think we might have touched on it before, but left field. Sorry.
Let's one thing at a time.
No, I was just trivial thing.
As of 2020, okay, here's the question I asked so people know what's happening. Is there any animosity between the Vatican Catholic Church versus the Eastern Orthodox Church in 2025? I may not even be asking the right question, but that's the question I asked because there are probably people out there who know more than us. Of our 12 viewers, I'm sure one of them has a PhD in Eastern Orthodox something or others. Okay, as of 2025, there's no widespread or escalating animosity between the Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church. There are points of tension and little things. I'm not even going to go through. I'm sure they could find a bunch of things. But summary.
Greece and Rome.
Yeah, exactly. But and basically day and age, they're cool. So maybe it's not weird that they met there.
No, it's not. It's just you know what, as far as like you and I were saying, like, you know, those circles of influence kind of getting closer together and working together. I mean, it can't be bad, I guess, you know, relatively, if they're having, as far as like, it's a peace talk. I think all 12 viewers would agree that if we can get closer to peace, that's a good thing wherever. They can have the conversation in hell, and it's a good thing.
But my understanding was that Trump was going to solve that the first day he was president. Wasn't there some talk of that? Wasn't there a claim made that all we needed to do, not we, but them, was elect him president, and in 24 hours it would be resolved?
You know what? And that, I think that's kind of where, if Trump were losing a bit of support on his base, that would probably be a big part of it. Like, you see a lot of the talk right now about the budget being higher than it was last year. And as much as this Doge stuff looks like it's doing something, like you hear them talking, I hear them being interviewed on the All In podcast, like some of the guys there, and they all seem like successful people who dropped what they were doing to help with this thing. The numbers don't look like it's having any effect. And if it is, they're just spending it again, you hear. Like apparently that money Mike Johnson said was being cut in the biggest beautiful spending bill is forecasted to be cut going over 10 years. So it's like not even really.
Again, this is the whole point of the whole thing. It's all like you say, it's all the theater, right? So
yeah.
So
the CIA probably just told Trump, like, we're not going to miss next time. So like, how about you just like keep sending weapons over there, and like.
So that's kind of my feeling. Like I was optimistic. I will say I was optimistic that there may be the wheels would turn a little quicker. But
I heard a montage today of Kash Patel, like 2 years ago, talking about what Christopher Wray needs to do. And now Kash Patel's Christopher Wray. He's head of the FBI, and you're just like, huh. Well, if only I had a time machine to show that guy this guy.
I know, like, and that's why that's the problem. Is the more you educate yourself and the more you look into it, the more ridiculous it becomes, and then you realize like
it's again, honestly like the swamp. It's you go in this room with this crystal that just draws your aura, and you just come out and you're just like, yeah, not that anymore. Like, I just, whatever it is, I'm like, because it's time and time again.
But that's kind of what we talked about before, right? It leads you to, like I said, as a parent, like looking at these, and again, maybe I was wrong sometimes, maybe I was right sometimes, but you're like, for the good of this household, okay, here's a classic example. I moved out to the country when my boys were really small. And then just the way the farmers' fields were around our property, my property was about 1.5 acres. And we lived in a big old farmhouse.
To clarify, yeah, we moved out to the country, not when you moved out. With your boys and your wife.
Yes, all of us.
Just
as a family, we moved out to the country. And our property was clearly demarked by farmers' fields. And in the winter, those farmers' fields a natural snowbank would be created. So there was kind of like, I would say, I don't know, like a 2-foot snowbank that just naturally formed every winter around our property, perimeter.
Cool for the kids.
Well, it was cool because I let the kids outside play unsupervised for younger and longer than you might normally if you lived obviously in town or something like this. But, you still have a concern that they're boys. Maybe they leave the property. they're totally safe, unsupervised for long periods of time in the property. But they could get lost in the woods. They could wander to a busier road 2 kilometers away if they were lost, whatever. So I told them that in the snowbanks that were around our property, there were snow snakes. And snow snakes are cool and they're not aggressive, but they have nests. And if you go stomping on their nests, those snow snakes, they're not going to put up with that. So my little boys, 3 of them, could stay outside all afternoon, build a snow fort, have the time of their lives, and
no problem.
nobody was concerned about them wandering off the property. So did I tell a lie? Yes. Do snow snakes exist? No. Was I a bad parent? Somebody might say I was. Was my interest in protecting my children from wandering off? That was the motivation. And that was 90% of it, and 10% of it so I could be slightly more negligent and not have to be staring out the window every 10 seconds at them. So, but 90% of it was for them. And that's what I would say would be the same comparison with like a Biden with his, take any bad villain you want to take, Biden, Schwab, this, that, and that. 90% of it is they probably think it's for the best of everybody. Like if we could make everybody live and eat bugs, we could save the planet from whatever. That's his thinking. And 10% of it is like, oh, well, and also, wouldn't it be nice if I could give my queer boyfriend, $3 billion as well for his, green energy startup. But the 90% is the, wouldn't it be great? Again, I'm not saying his ideology is right. We would disagree with his ideology, but his ideology is grand and benevolent. Most people, that's like, again, they can be ignorantly benevolent and not see how their ignorant benevolence would destroy things and harm the most harmless amongst us. But it doesn't mean malice. And that's the point I'm making. I guess I've said it many times tonight. That's the point I believe, because I just haven't seen the archetype of people around me that exhibit this evilness. Again, I'm open to that exists, but I don't know. I never seen it.
Say, like true evil, like the sociopath type, would probably avoid you like the plague.
I may be.
Because you're a no nonsense, pretty good judge of character kind of guy, and they would know,
Yeah, but these guys, who cares about me? Even if I am an astute judge of character, for them to pull off what they would have to pull off at a global level, they would have to be like David Copperfield pulling rabbits out of their so they would be beyond my ability to detect their deceit. They would be like Tony Robbins.
Olive branch understanding. I think like a lot of things too they're so compartmentalized, where you might have like think about when we both did different types of financing, and we've talked about like the shades of gray that would exist in that world. And you weren't like breaking any laws or anything like that, but like you're just doing.
You weren't breaking any laws,
but you're just doing. No, and I think that's what it is. Is like everybody's just doing like a little, like 8% bad, and you're like thinking, well, my boss is doing 13% bad, so me doing 8% bad, like I'm just keeping my job. Like he's worse, And then
right,
and then it's a big thing like that where it just happens to culminate.
And exactly, and you accumulate your 8% here and his 13% there, and even those numbers are too big. Like your 1.5% here, his 3% there, and then this other organization's 5% there, and then
7%. Yeah,
absolutely. And again, you have people with like what I would say are retarded ideologies, but they're not bad people. Like I grew up in the church, right? I had all kinds of people who were horrible people. Right? Like destroying and damaging the lives of people around them because they indelicately interpreted, the scripture or something in a way that just hurt people. But they believed they were they believed in their heart of hearts
that
that
they were doing the right thing.
they were doing the right thing, and they would have given their shirt, their money, their this, their time. Their, like, I mean, they're actually more commendable because most people are just virtue signalers and they just say something. These people were living examples, even though they were destructive. They at least practiced what they preached. They at least were like, "Oh, I think climate change is bad," and then they hop on their jet to Ibiza, like ridiculous, right? These people were be like, "Oh, they're again." So nothing is so cut and dry as to be, like, again, it's ridiculous. Like, I couldn't get my sons to do anything, but let alone the Merovingian kings of old could create these like elaborate structures to have, multi-generational evil plans to incorporate, Satanism and witchcraft and the occult, and they're gonna like take over all of Europe. Like, ridiculous, right? Like, ridiculous. You can't get that multi-generational, like,
Well, then sometimes you
insane.
hear the conspiracy is that the government wants you to think these conspiracies because it makes them look more powerful than they really are. It's like let the
Yeah,
people wonder
maybe,
about that. Let them wonder about that.
and maybe one guy said that somewhere. Like, I would say, as most people, most, like we learned with this elbows up, and like we learned with COVID, most people go along to get along. And then you probably have like, like everything's a spectrum or a bell curve, and you're gonna have like weirdo leftist is one number here, and then down over here is weirdo rightist, and then everybody else is some sort of gradient in between. And the vast majority of people occupy that top part of the bell curve, and it probably aren't that different from each other. And whatever differences we have are magnifications of the system for people to get what they want. Again, not in malice, in whatever, 50% for the good of this, 10% for their ego, 14% for financial gains, 3% because they want to fuck Lucy and the who's the secretary, or like whatever, right? It's are you so like you can't even get your bathroom finished drywalled, but you're gonna somehow create like a multi-generational like plan to like take over this. And then even if you were the dynamo and you had four sons, like, are all four of your sons going to be these dynamos who carry out? Like, no, man, it just doesn't play out in the real world. My take.
Well, I think that's a good take and as good a place of any to end the episode. Although
I
I
accept.
still think there is good and evil. I do agree. There's definitely archetypes, and it is more or less just systems begetting systems. That
Yeah,
like it's
yeah, but
they're all
that's
Titanics.
the
They can't
thing.
turn.
Yeah, and
Everything's a
again,
Titanic. They can't turn.
and I'm open to, that there are truly evil people, and there are people with like horrible concerns and desires. I'm just believe more in the fact that humans are ultimately kind of incapable and are at the whims of nature, black swan events, this, that, and the other.
Well, to your point, even the guy that say maybe wants to wipe the population out by 90% of the Earth, if they truly feel in their heart that the show's only going to last another 10 years, if they don't act, but by doing so it could go further for like another 1,000, then like they don't even feel like they're doing anything evil. You know what I mean? If you're to Thanos away stuff. So it's just the way she goes.
For sure. Well, I mean, not to bring, I mean, I know it's just a movie, but that's basically what you just said is the premise of 12 Monkeys, which is also a great movie that people should
Fantastic
watch
movie. Yeah.
if you've never seen it. But I mean, you think that scientist who released that virus in the movie, oops.
You know,
For
Brad Pitt quit smoking during that, so he'd be like a little more spazzy and kind of
jittery.
like, yeah,
I would actually say that was one of his best performances, is in
yeah.
that.
He's a chain smoker, and he didn't smoke during that movie, so he would be
That's
a little
great.
bit of a
I always
weirdo.
like my favorite line in that movie when he's giving Bruce Willis the tour of the mental facility, and he's like, and these are where we keep the games. And then the games are locked up in a cupboard. And he's like, games that want to get out. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Oh, one quick thing. We had a subscriber slash comment who would like us to do a show. And so I will make sure you get the topics and we will 100% tackle those issues for the commenter. So we'll talk to you later. Thanks, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
Wow!